what if everything we've been taught about spiritual growth, honoring our ancestors, and even the fundamental role of historical figures like Buddha,
Mm.
what if it's all just completely backwards?
Right, like totally flipped.
Seriously, imagine if the entire traditional playbook, the bowing, the rituals, the begging for divine help, was actually the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us a fascinating, honestly, pretty dense stack of notes on a profoundly disruptive philosophical lecture. It's titled Reinterpretation of Buddha's Birthday.
Yeah, that's the one.
And our mission today is to sort of sift through these sources you provided and extract what is essentially a completely new blueprint for societal leadership. It redefines how we view our roles in the world, what filial piety actually means, and it culminates in this incredibly urgent real-world mission for modern leaders.
Okay, let's unpack this. Yeah, we should definitely establish right away that this isn't just an abstract theological debate. Looking at the notes you shared, it really does turn conventional wisdom on its head.
Completely.
The source material is laying out a highly structured, almost mechanical blueprint for how individuals acquire skills, how they hit a hard physical ceiling in their development, and ultimately how they are supposed to actually apply those skills to society.
It's very pragmatic, right?
Exactly. It's a pragmatic, very unromantic look at the human life cycle of growth and responsibility.
Okay, so the text starts by dividing society's growth paths into two very distinct lanes. It calls them IPAN and SEPAN,
Right? The two paths.
based on the breakdown in your notes. The IPAN path is essentially the track of the intellectual or the skilled professional. These are individuals who focus on, acquiring knowledge, mastering a craft, gaining specific talents through schooling and education.
Yes, and when they enter society, their mechanism for growth is meeting a mentor. That's a key distinction.
Right. And then the other side of that.
The other side of that coin is the Sipan path. These individuals are focused on the structural side of society, the economy, enterprise, leadership.
So not just isolated skills.
No, they aren't just learning a specialized solitary skill. They are learning how to lead people and manage vast resources. And crucially, the text says they don't need a mentor to grow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, a mentor teaches a skill, but a Sapan individual must meet a strategist or a Cheksa to really develop their enterprise and understand how to, deploy their influence.
I love this framing because it translates so perfectly to something like a video game skill tree.
Huh, yeah, it really does.
It's like you choose the scholar class, that's your IPAN, or you choose the leader class, your SEPAN. You grind, you level up, you meet your mentors or your strategists to unlock new abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But here is the crazy part of the source material you sent over.
Keep cap.
Yes, the game hard caps your leveling at exactly 70%. It literally says that once you have acquired all the knowledge, all the wealth, or all the people you possibly can, you have only reached 70% completion. You've got all the high-level loot and spells, but you are just stuck there.
What's fascinating here is the text's explicit warning about that 70% threshold.
Yeah, the warning is intense.
You might assume that acquiring 70% of all possible wealth or knowledge in a given field is a massive unchecked success. But the source argues that having all this power without knowing the overarching purpose for it will actually ruin your life.
Wow, ruin it.
The text states very clearly, having nothing doesn't ruin you. If you don't have power or wealth, you simply lack the leverage to cause massive destruction to your own life or the lives of others.
That makes sense. You can't crash a car you don't own.
Exactly. But if you have acquired that 70%, if you are a brilliant intellectual or a wealthy economic titan and you misuse those massive tools, it leads to absolute catastrophe. The sheer mass of that unutilized energy stagnates. Your life becomes, as the text translates, a total mess.
I want to push back on that specific number for a second, though, because my immediate thought reading your notes was, why 70%? Why not 80 or 100?
Well, the philosophy underlying the text suggests that 70% is the maximum physical and intellectual limit a human being can achieve through just individual selfish accumulation.
Oh, okay.
Nature allows you to gather resources up to that point through sheer effort. But that final 30%, it cannot be bought, studied, or accumulated in a vacuum.
It needs something else.
Right. It requires a spiritual or societal unification. It's the application phase. You have the raw materials, but you don't possess the blueprint for the house.
That makes total sense. I mean, we see this all the time in the real world.
Yeah.
People who achieve massive financial success or academic brilliance, but their personal lives are in shambles.
Or they completely toxic out the companies they built.
Yes. They have the 70% capacity but zero direction. So if mentors and strategists can only get us to that 70% mark, who or what takes us the rest of the way?
So the lecture introduces a massive paradigm shift right here. After hitting that 70% mark, the text says one must meet a teacher, capital T.
A teacher.
And the controversial part of the material you highlighted is the claim that this guiding the 70% equipped individual is the true role of Buddha.
Wait, this completely flips the traditional comfort religion narrative.
It really does.
Because usually the cultural understanding of religion is that it's a safety net. It's the place you go when you've hit rock bottom, when you're helpless and need carrying.
Right, the carry me mindset.
But the source is essentially saying Buddha isn't a crutch for the helpless. It's not about carrying a baby who's just learning to walk. It's saying Buddha is a masterclass instructor exclusively for when you are already highly successful.
The text explicitly states that Buddha does not help with basic early-stage growth. Evolution, basic learning, getting your initial footing in the physical world that is on you, your society, your mentors, and your strategists.
That's your job.
That is the division of labor. The Buddha's job is to step in when you already have the heavy machinery, to show you how to utilize that acquired wealth, knowledge, and influence wisely so that your life truly shines.
That is a massive challenge to traditional dogma. The lecture actually condemns blind worship, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It says people are ruining their lives by falling into Buddha without understanding this division of labor. It's like you can't just bow and pray your way to the top of the mountain. You have to climb the 70% yourself.
Right, you have to do the hike.
The source is arguing that living your life well, actively using your toolkit to do good, is the only actual way to honor Buddha.
It demands an immense level of personal responsibility. This completely shifts the dynamic from passive worship, where the divine figure does the heavy lifting while you ask for favors, to the active, strategic application of your own talents.
No more asking for favors.
Exactly. The text suggests that historical religious figures were effectively ultimate guides for the highly capable, not dispensers of miracles for those refusing to do the groundwork.
So they give you the wisdom, not the raw material.
Yes. If you have the tools, it's your duty to figure out how to use them, and the teacher provides the wisdom for that application.
Okay, but if this teacher is supposed to help us use our tools to shine, what is the actual metric for success? How do we know we've actually crossed that 70% threshold and used our tools correctly?
That's where it gets interesting.
The notes you sent transition into this concept of joy. And in doing so, the text completely redefines how we are supposed to honor the divine in our ancestors. It redefines the concept of hayo, or filial piety.
For context, filial piety, the deep, unwavering respect and duty owed to one's parents and ancestors, has been a cornerstone of Korean culture and many Eastern cultures for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's usually demonstrated through elaborate rituals, obedience, and material offerings. But the source argues that for all those millennia, the core mechanism of the concept has been entirely misunderstood.
It really goes after the traditional rituals. It says honoring God or your ancestors isn't about bowing or pleading or offering rice cakes on a ceremonial altar.
No rice cakes.
Right. And it gives us a brilliant, almost funny example. It says, true filial piety is not about buying your parents a mink coat or finding them some rare candy that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Ah, the mink coat fallacy. It perfectly encapsulates the superficial way society often tries to show respect.
Totally.
We use material goods or formal, empty rituals to artificially demonstrate a devotion that we think is required of us. But the text strips all of that away to reveal a much deeper psychological truth.
What?
It states that our ancestors sacrificed immensely, often living grueling lives, simply for us to be here, to have the foundational opportunity to reach that 70% capability.
They did the hard work.
Exactly. Therefore, the only proper way to honor them and to honor the divine is for the descendants to live genuinely joyful lives.
Think about this for a second. How often do you stress over bullying the perfect gift for your parents? Or feel guilty that you aren't doing enough to show respect to your family's legacy?
Oh, all the time. It's a universal feeling.
And yet this text is arguing that your own personal joy is the only tribute that actually matters. If you aren't happy, all the mink coats in the world mean absolutely nothing.
There's empty gestures.
Hold on, if we combine the 70% rule with the mink coat fallacy, is the text essentially saying that our entire modern economy is built on fake filial piety? We just buy things because it's easier than doing the hard work of becoming fulfilled.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, It is a radical psychological reframing of guilt and duty. Often, duty to ancestors or to God is framed through the lens of suffering or sacrifice.
Like, you have to be miserable to be good.
Right. You must give things up, you must be solemn, you must endure. But this text argues that your happiness is a moral obligation. It is the direct return on the investment made by those who came before you.
A moral obligation to be happy. I love that.
The text actually asks a really pointed question. It asks, are people today actually happy? And it describes modern people as being mute as if they ate honey.
Mute as if they ate honey. That is such a vivid phrase.
It implies that people have consumed the sweetness, the material wealth, the 70% toolkit, but they are struck dumb when it comes to expressing genuine, profound happiness.
Wow.
They have everything they could ever want materially, but their souls are stagnant.
So your happiness is a moral obligation. But the text doesn't just say, go be happy however you want. It's incredibly strict about how that joy is mathematically manufactured.
Very strict.
It introduces what we can call the 0.1 millimeter rule.
This is where the philosophy becomes almost mechanistic. The text asserts that true joy does not come from selfish pleasure or sensory indulgence. It comes only from acting as, quote, God's workers, and using that 70% toolkit of knowledge and resources to widely benefit society.
Wait, I have to challenge this because the rule feels overly rigid. The text literally says that if you do not actively benefit society, you will not receive even 0.1 millimeters of joy, not a fraction of it.
That's the claim.
You're telling me if a billionaire donates $50 million to a hospital charity but doesn't actively lead with joy, they get mathematically zero spiritual credit. How does the text justify that kind of absolute binary?
Well, it justifies it by separating material redistribution from energetic exchange. Writing a check is just moving part of that 70% accumulation from one bank account to another.
I see.
It doesn't require the billionaire to act as a teacher or to elevate the consciousness of the people. True joy, according to this source, is an energetic byproduct of applying your wisdom to solve fundamental human suffering.
So you can't fake it.
You can't fake it, and you can't buy it with a donation. You have to earn the joy through active societal contribution.
The source takes this a step further by elevating the people who actually managed to do this. The notes claim that all intellectuals and leaders who successfully use their tools to benefit humanity are actually Buddhas themselves, or holy mothers, or holy sons.
Right, it redefines the terms.
It completely democratizes the concept of divinity, tying it directly to civic action. And this brings us to some terms in your notes that need a little unpacking. The source lists Avalokitesvara and Bodhisattva.
Right. To clarify those terms simply in the traditional Buddhist framework, Avalokitesvara represents the ultimate embodiment of compassion, literally the one who hears the cries of the world. And a bodhisattva is someone who has attained the capability for enlightenment, but consciously chooses to remain in the cycle of the world to help others achieve it too.
So they stay behind to help.
Exactly. The text brings these up to make a secular point. These aren't magical beings in the sky. These are just ancient labels for the Ipan and Sapan leaders who hit their 70% and chose to use their tools for society rather than themselves.
And the source talks about how different religions use these different terms. Avalokitesvara, Bodhisattva, Buddha, Holy Son. It brings up the concepts of Christian love versus Buddhist mercy or compassion.
Yes, the brand names.
Right, but it claims they use these different terms basically so they aren't accused of copying each other.
The text is remarkably cynical about religious terminology while maintaining deep respect for the underlying intent.
The funny balance.
It really is. It argues that the core truth of all these traditions is identical, using your developed capability to help others. But human institutions created different labels, what you might call brand names, to maintain their distinct organizational identities and power structures.
The source is basically calling out historical religious terminology as copyright dodging. It's like, hey, don't use the word mercy. The Buddhists already trademarked that one. Let's go with love.
Pretty much.
And it even analyzes the difference, saying love is actually a shallower, more emotional concept than mercy, which requires deeper wisdom. But love is easier for the masses to digest, so Christianity ran with it to build their brand.
It is a humorous way to frame it, but it grounds a very serious philosophical argument.
Very true.
The text is declaring that the era of clinging to these divided dogmas and franchise names is over. It argues that modern intellectuals, highly educated individuals who have reached that 70% arc today, have absorbed the entire cultural history of humanity.
They have all the data.
Exactly. They have access to all these different teachings. Because of that, it is their specific duty to stop playing with these logical divisions and unify these cultural truths.
You use an agricultural metaphor, right?
Hmm.
Saying it is time for the wheat to be separated from the chaff.
It does, and the definition is telling. The chaff, or the empty husks, are the ones loudly arguing over dogma, making endless noise about which religion is right, but lacking any practical substance.
Just noise.
Right. The true wheat, the enlightened individuals, are those who silently, without needing a specific religious brand name to validate them, simply do the work to benefit humanity.
Silent action over loud dogma. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. But the lecture doesn't let us just sit comfortably in this abstract, unified philosophical space.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Looking at the final section of your notes, this is where the deep dive takes a massive, almost shocking pivot. The text moves from talking about the theoretical nature of Buddha and the history of religious copyright dodging into a stark, immediate life or death mandate for society's leaders.
This is the crescendo of the source material. It states that to prove they are the wheat, to prove they are what it calls Hongik Ingen leaders, these individuals must gather as what the text calls social parents.
Let's define Hongik Ingen really quickly, because it pops up in the notes out of nowhere.
Sure. Hongik Ingen is an ancient Korean philosophical maxim that translates roughly to broadly benefiting humanity.
Broadly benefiting humanity.
Right. The text resurrects this ancient term to describe modern leaders who have moved past selfish accumulation and are actively using their 70% toolkit for the global good.
And it gives these Hongik Ingen leaders, these social parents, an immediate, highly specific mission. Achieve South Korea's suicide zero by the year 2030.
It's incredibly specific.
We literally went from debating the philosophical nuances of Christian love versus Buddhist mercy to a 2030 deadline to solve a very real national crisis.
It's a jarring transition, but a deeply logical one within the mechanical framework the text has built. The lecture explicitly points out that South Korea has the #1 global suicide rate. And it places the blame for this tragedy entirely on the shoulders of society's leaders, the people who possess the 70% capability but are failing to act as true teachers.
It's a massive indictment of the elite. I was trying to visualize how the text blames the leaders for the despair of the everyday person, and it feels like a skyscraper analogy.
How so?
It's like society is this massive skyscraper, and the people in the penthouse, the leaders with the 70% wealth and knowledge, are hoarding all the building's electricity. They're sitting up there wondering why the people on the ground floor are living in total darkness and despair.
The skyscraper analogy captures the mechanism perfectly. Societal energy is a flow. If the people at the top accumulate 70% of the resources but don't know how to circulate that energy back down through joyful, purposeful leadership, the bottom of the structure physically starves.
It just breaks down.
Exactly. The text makes it clear if the root cause of the societal pain is not fixed, nothing else matters. You cannot claim spiritual enlightenment, you cannot claim to be a unified global leader, and you will not be recognized by the broader world if the foundation of your own house is fundamentally sick.
So what does this all mean? It means eradicating this crisis is the prerequisite for everything else.
Yes.
The source says that only by curing this fundamental sickness, by achieving suicide zero, can these leaders then turn to the rest of the world and redefine social welfare and spiritual leadership for all of humanity. They have to prove the model actually works at home first.
It brilliantly ties the entire argument together. It's the ultimate real-world litmus test for the 0.1 millimeter rule we discussed earlier.
The joy metric.
Right. You cannot claim to have reached that 70% capability, and you certainly cannot claim to be honoring your ancestors with true joy, while your specific society is structurally generating the highest rate of despair in the world. Action specifically, solving the most severe, fatal pain in your immediate environment is the only acceptable proof of enlightenment.
It takes the pressure off the individual struggling at the bottom, who barely has enough resources to survive, and puts the moral weight entirely on the people at the top who have the tools to change the system. It's a literal call to arms for the intellectuals and the executives.
It really is.
So, to recap this incredible journey the source material has taken us on, we start by recognizing the need to level up our earthly skills, whether we are scholars or leaders, until we hit that hard 70% ceiling.
Step 1.
Then, instead of looking for a divine crutch to do the work for us, we seek a higher teacher to show us how to actually deploy those massive tools. We deploy them to generate true joy by serving society, which is the only real way to practice filial piety and honor the past. We see through the copyright-dodging brand names of historical religions, realize they're all pointing to the exact same truth, and we apply all of that unified knowledge to save actual lives, starting with the most vulnerable in our own society.
It really is a profound, actionable blueprint. And as a final thought on the mechanics of all this, I'd encourage anyone analyzing this framework to engage in some critical thinking about their own path.
Definitely.
Look at the skills, the resources, the education you have acquired, your personal percentage. The source is asking you to evaluate whether those tools are just sitting there, potentially causing internal chaos, or if they are actively being used to generate that crucial zero point 0.1 millimeters of joy for your community. It's a completely different metric for measuring a successful life.
It really is. And it leaves us with a lingering question based on the notes you shared, one that flips that initial hook completely upside down.
If true filial piety and spiritual success are measured purely by how much our joy practically benefits society, then every time we withhold our talents from our community, every time we sit on our 70% and do absolutely nothing, are we committing the ultimate act of disrespect to the past? Look at the toolkit you've built in your own life. What is it actually doing for the people around you? Think about it. We'll see you next time.